Hello and welcome to Raising Anchor, your podcast and source for all things Rhode Island FC. I'm your host, Matt Entrican, and joining me today on the podcast for another special episode is Rhode Island FC defender Rio Hopegun. Rio, thanks for joining us here. So excited to have you on the pod.
Thanks for having me. It's an honor.
I have been wanting to sit down and talk to you ever since you got the opportunity to land with Rhode Island FC. Wasn't sure if we would ever get to do this back in the day because you were on that trialist 25-day contract. Super excited to see you be able to stick that landing. And we're definitely going to talk about that a little bit later on. But I always start these off by asking the first question: how have you enjoyed your time in Rhode Island so far? We've heard some complaints lately from some of the players about the quality of roads. We've heard other great things. What's been your overall take, especially considering you're an East Coaster, and we're going to get into that a lot? How
Yeah.
have you been enjoying this so far?
It's been great. I really enjoyed my time here. I think, some of the things that stand out to me most are like first and foremost, like the people here and especially like our fans. They're diehard and they're so supportive. Obviously like we haven't been the best that we can be this year, but they stick behind us. After the games, there's always kids and fans who want signatures and are there to support. And that's a really good feeling for like a player. And it's a really special feeling, to be honest, as well, because not all teams have that. So that's one of the things. I really enjoyed the food here. It's a lot of food options, in the Providence area and Greater Rhode Island area. So that's been awesome. But yeah, it's been really cool so far for the first time that I've ever lived in Rhode Island. Yeah.
So I got to ask, you're a New Yorker, and not just any New Yorker. You might be a super New Yorker, an unapologetic New Yorker. Got to ask the pizza. Have you tried Rhode Island pizza strips yet? Do you know what those are?
I have not yet. No, I've had a regular slice, but I don't know what Rhode Island pizza strips are.
So I won't spoil it then because we've been told that it ranks as like the worst pizza among all 50 states. And as a New Yorker, I feel like that's something that you probably take a little bit closer to heart. So then I'll ask this: as a New Yorker, what is the best pizza in New York City?
Oh man, there's so many good spots. My two favorite spots for nostalgia purposes, I used to like go to this one spot around my middle school and high school called Joe's. It's a very popular spot, but they always just serve a very classic, delicious cheese slice. And then there's this other spot called Motorino's. It's on the Lower East Side, and it's got great, great pizza. That's also good. There's also this other spot in Brooklyn called Luigi's, which is good. But there's so many good spots for pizza. You can get a good slice almost everywhere in New York.
What makes a good slice in your opinion? Like what's that key ingredient or key process in a good pizza from New York?
Yeah, I think, not too thin, not too thick crust, like kind of just right. Um, Very nice melt on the cheese. A good amount of tomato sauce. I don't like the slices that are like too cheesy, um, or too tomatoey, to be honest. And then for me, I just like adding all the toppings like oregano, red pepper flakes, garlic, all of that. And I really do like adding hot honey to my pizza slices as well. So
Preach that to the top of the roofs. I'm all about the hot honey.
yeah.
We had a former New York City FC alumni, former Rhode Island FC now alumni, and former New Yorker Stephen Turnbull. We asked him the same question a while back, and he said that cold cheese, like, don't sleep on that. Have you had cold cheese? Is that a thing, and or should that always be ignored and avoided if you're traveling in New York City?
Um, the only time I've had cold cheese is like when I bring pizza back home and I have it from the fridge and then the next morning or for lunch the next day, which is not bad. Turnbull is right about that. But I wouldn't go to a pizzeria and like ask them for a cold slice. I personally, but everybody has their preference.
No, that makes sense. And then before we get into your playing time and just the history of who you are, noticed on the social medias over the player break, looked like a lot of Rhode Island FC players went down in New York City to take in the sights. Did they ask you to kind of be a tour guide and give some recommendations? Do you end up being that guy for the club as they make their way down to the Big Apple every once in a while?
Yeah, I think guys before the little break, guys were definitely, curious about spots. I didn't play tour guide for the guys that were there, to be honest, but people ask me about like neighborhoods to go to, and if there's anything in particular they should check out, in terms of like restaurants or parks or whatever it may be. So it's cool. I try to give them the best I know, like, and give them the best recommendations for those things. So hopefully, I think they all enjoyed their time over there. So yeah.
So then let's get into this. As a New Yorker, as a soccer player, we've talked at length about your appreciation of New York sports, but you were grown and raised in New York City. I mean, from Soho to Brooklyn, you're a Manhattan guy to a lot of extent there. You played for clubs like New York Soccer Club. You
Mhm.
spent time, I think, in your earliest time with some of the different academies and the youth there. Obviously, then moving into the New York City FC soccer scene a little bit later. But what did all of that culture do for you in terms of New York specific soccer, and how did that shape you as the player you are today and as the person you are?
Yeah, born and raised in New York, played my whole life in New York. When I was younger, it was more like local clubs. There's this big kind of club called ASO, so I did that growing up a little, and then I played for this other kind of big club in the city called Dusk, which is like Downtown United Soccer Club. Um, I did that all the way through, I want to say like middle school, and then that's when I kind of had to make the decision of like, do I want to keep playing kind of local, or do I want to take that next step to try and like play at the best level? And I actually ended up playing for New York Red Bull for a year, from eighth grade to ninth grade, and then in ninth grade I moved to New York Soccer Club, which was up in like Westchester, New York. Um, and my brother and I actually moved together to play for that club, and we made that decision with our parents because it was probably the best option in terms of us like getting the best quality coaching and getting the best quality looks for college scouts, for example, because that was something that both of us had wanted to pursue at the time. And then I played there through high school. So, and then yeah, coming back my third year and fourth year professional, coming back playing for the second team and the first team at NYCFC, was super cool. But um, I think I just learned a lot of like, I mean, growing up in the city, you learn to kind of be like city tough, and I think that translates directly through the soccer that's in and around the city, because obviously all the other players are also from New York, so they're also kind of on that same kind of mentality wavelength, I guess you can say. And yeah, you just kind of learn like a grit and a grind that I feel like is specific to New York. I mean, every place has their own kind of style, but I think that grit and grind is definitely specific to New York and specific to New Yorkers. And it was really cool to see how that kind of translated from like my regular life as a city kid to like my soccer life as a New York City soccer player. But it was a awesome experience, playing soccer in New York, and a lot of the players that came up with me, I'm still in touch with today, and yes, great memories from that. Yeah.
You played with like former colleagues like James Sands. I think it was in like your time around. So, like I said, the New York Soccer Club, but then you also cut your teeth on the Friends Seminary. Like you were in there, but you were playing at a time also where New York City FC was just an idea. Like it was coming. Everyone knew it, but no one knew the shape that it would take as well. Did you always see that if there was going to be that team, that was going to be where you had to play, that's where you had to end up? Or were you saying to yourself, like, if it's going to be a New York team, it might be the Red Bulls down in Jersey?
Yeah. In terms of that, when I was in like middle school and high school, New York's NYCFC was just kind of like you said, like an idea being formed. I think it was officially like the first academy was officially formed when I was a sophomore in high school, and on my New York Soccer Club team was my brother. I was on the team. James Sands, his twin brother Will Sands, who's on the New England Revolution now, and plenty of other players. And the cutoff for the NYCFC Academy was like players born in 2000, and our team was full of players that were born 99 and 2000. So as soon as they did that, I'm a 99, so I wasn't me and my brother were not able to play. But as soon as they did that, all our best players who were born in 2000, like James Sands, Will Sands, my friend Dante Polvara, and a whole group of other guys, like they all just moved because it was an obvious move to a MLS academy, new in the area. But it was really it was like sad and frustrating and all these emotions at the same time, because like we all loved our time together, and our team was so good at that time. And then they moved, and then so I kind of had this like little, I don't want to call it hatred because that's a very strong word, but like I had this like,
Jealousy?
yeah, jealousy and animosity towards NYCFC for the first couple of years. And then um just as I got older, I started just growing to watch them all the time, and I enjoyed watching them. And then it was never a, I'd say like a plan in my head where I was like, I want to come back and play for this team. I think it was always a in terms of like a hypothetical, like a luxury, if I were ever able to get that experience and opportunity, which I'm so grateful that I did end up getting it. And coming back and playing for New York was so special, and like around friends and family, living back in the city for the first time since high school. It was really special, and I'm so grateful to have those 2 years there. So yeah, that was awesome.
So then, as a New Yorker, did you ever count the Metro Stars and then the Red Bulls as the New York team, or was it always like it's the only team nearby that I can get behind at the top flight of football in America?
Yeah, I wouldn't. I would say the Red Bulls, like before New York City FC was formed, the Red Bulls were the team that if there were New York soccer fans, like they would go to Red Bulls games. I think once NYCFC was formed, a I would say a decent amount of fans who actually lived in the city kind of got on that train, just because I mean, I definitely did, because I felt like it just represented us more. The stadium was actually in New York instead of Jersey. They were branded as like the city team, and then they had signed all these superstars like David Villa, Andre Pirlo, Frank Lampard. I mean, there were so many like great names that came through in those first couple of years that they were professional. So, um, the Red Bulls definitely, I would say they deserve their flowers, like in terms of like paving the way for walking so NYCFC could run. But I think for like city, people who live in the city and soccer fans, like I think most would kind of prefer to support NYCFC over Red Bulls. And yeah.
And it's also been what, 30 years and they still don't have a star, and NYCFC did it pretty quick. So totally understand. Getting back to you though, you talk about a 1 year cutoff makes the difference on potentially the trajectory for you and your brother. And so I want to ask, like, did you realize the path you were on was professional soccer always the goal in those early years, or did you just enjoy playing, you had a knack for it, and you were going to see that out for as long as possible?
Yeah, growing up, my brother and I played all sports. We were just super sporty, the two of us, and it was great because we could compete against each other in whatever it is. But I'd say the three biggest sports we played were basketball, baseball, and soccer. And then we were just having fun, enjoying it like kids do. And then I think in like late middle school, our parents were like, if you want to take any of these seriously, you might have to kind of now choose just one to like really focus on. And we both chose soccer. I think it was for many reasons, but I think we were just both the best at soccer, even though I will say my brother was a very good basketball player and still is. So that might be a different answer for him, but for me, it was clear, like, take soccer serious. And once we did that, and once we started playing in high school, I think, the idea of playing in college, and possibly playing professionally started kind of coming into reality in a way, and into my mind in a way. But I still didn't really, I would say I still didn't really have like that, like I'm gonna take this to that level, like I'm gonna take this pro. I think that really hit me once I got to college. Like once I was recruited to Georgetown, and I got to Georgetown and I started playing in my second year, I think then I was like, I saw former Georgetown teammates and, start going into the MLS and the USL. And I was like, oh, like this is actually something that I could really pursue if I really put my mind to it and work for it. And then by my junior year, I was a starter on that team, and it became a real possibility and opportunity once coach starts telling me there's MLS interest and this and that, and then I'm like, okay, like this is something that I want to turn into a reality.
So let's talk about that time with Georgetown because it was pretty historic. One, you helped the Hoyas lift their first ever NCAA championship in 2019. By the time that you run your part within the program, you become Big East Defender of the Year. Want to ask you, as you reflect back on those moments, you just said it was kind of a turning point in your decision to go pro. What were the things that stood out the most in your time there? Was it players that you played with? Was it the coaching staff, or was it something else that was internal for yourself?
Yeah, I mean, I'm so grateful for my time. I'm grateful for the coaching staff for giving me the opportunities that they did. I think the biggest thing um, that stands out to me, or stood out to me at the time, and still stands out to me to this day, is my teammates. I mean, we Coach Brian Weiss and the rest of the coaching staff through the years, like they did such a good job in recruiting, and we had some really great players from when I first visited as a high school junior to when I graduated. Even obviously, still today, there's like great players coming through that program. And when I was on that team, especially in 2019, the year we won, we just had such an amazing, deep roster. And we all had a really great understanding of the system that we wanted to play, that Coach Weiss wanted to play. And we all had a great understanding of how we all played together. Training sessions were competitive games. We competed. And that was probably the biggest thing for me, in my eyes, that pushed us to win that national championship. Just the quality of player was fantastic. I mean, we have pros like around the world now, a lot of MLS guys, a lot of USL guys. So yeah, that was definitely probably the biggest thing for me, um, from that team.
From there, you go on to get drafted in the first round of the MLS Super Draft to Orlando City. I want to ask, what's it like going from playing this critical role with a team like the Hoyas and then getting to the top, but knowing that there's still so much work to be done? And what's it like having to shift from that, you're going to be starting every week, everyone's depending on you, to maybe you have a little bit more of a supplemental role until you earn that way forward? How do you transition from one mentality to the next, or is there real no difference and it's just whether you get selected from game to game?
Yeah, it's a huge transition, and I think it's a huge transition for all college guys who end up going pro, especially in the MLS and definitely the USL as well, because the USL is getting better by the year. But it's a huge transition, and it's very difficult, if I'm being honest, because it's hard. It's hard to go from being that star guy or one of the star guys and one of the lead guys to being somebody who maybe doesn't even make the roster, on a regular basis. And I think one of the biggest differences that college guys get to notice pretty quickly is, in college you're kind of guaranteed like 4 years on a team. You're kind of guaranteed minutes eventually if you're not playing in the beginning, or it's not a real guarantee, but it's like more of an idea of that. And then once you get to the pros, it's literally like dog eat dog, which is, for lack of a better term, there's first of all, it's grown men versus college students who are trying to put food on the table for their families, and put a roof over their heads. And it's just a whole nother level of like competitiveness, and you see that from day one in training sessions and in games. And I think that's the biggest kind of difference and biggest jump kind of thing you notice, coming from college to that level. And yeah, it's I would definitely say it's difficult. I would think that a lot of guys would say it's difficult, and you definitely have to work towards kind of understanding that, and then um, understanding like your role in whatever situation you're thrown into, like, and just doing that role to the best of your ability.
Is there any example of like a very specific wake up moment where, you didn't have any expectations, but was there like a point where reality just kind of hit you and said, "Hey, this for the time being is what you'll need to do to continue down this path." Is there anything that kind of you woke up one day or you experienced and were like, "Oh, okay, I understand the assignment now."
Yeah, it's funny. My friend calls it my welcome to the league moment. But I would say my first day in Orlando, I got there the night before, and I'm in my first training, and we're doing like a 1v1 to goal drill, and Luis Nani is like literally the first guy that I had to defend, and this is like a Man United Portugal legend. Like, obviously he's in his older days, but he still got the sauce, and he just did me like 3 times, like dribbled me and just made me look stupid, and I was like, dang, like, all right, I got to step it up, And it was like one of the first drills on my first training. That was definitely the moment where I was like, whoa, like this is the level, cool. Like, but it was really cool at the same time because I was like defending Luis Nani, even though he beat me. But yeah.
Do you still get that way when you meet players of any kind of caliber or quality? I mean, I think most recently, Loudon, your former team, Florian Velo is a legend in and of himself. I don't know if he was on the team at the same time you were, but like when you see players of that pedigree and you get the chance, do you still get that kind of like awestruck moment, or is it all business and you're out there to kill?
When I was younger, I think it was definitely more like that. And obviously, like in the MLS, there's bigger names than the USL. So like a player like Nani on my team that same year was Alexandre Pato. Like that was pretty surreal for me to like be playing with and against in training. Like guys I grew up watching in the Champions League. Playing scoring against Barcelona and hitting bicycle kicks and whatever. Like that was surreal. I think at the point I am in my career now, it's more business, no matter who it is. I feel like I feel like just with time, you kind of outgrow that like fanboy kind of instinct, I guess you might get in certain moments. But definitely early on in my career, it was like really, really cool to kind of have those moments. Yeah.
No, I hear it. Let's get into Loudon then. And a lot of people, I don't think, realize that you've already had a taste of the championship before you came to Rhode Island FC. You moved from Orlando to Loudon. You make an immediate impact on that squad. I believe captaining your debut, going on to play, I think 18 to 20 matches, depending on the different type of competition with Loudon. Want to ask you, first and foremost, you've captained now on multiple levels from your youth time to professionalship. How do you approach leadership as a defender, and what was the overall experience that you had at Loudon?
Yeah, Loudon was a very kind of transformative year for me, I'd say, as a leader, like specifically to that question. At the time, it was 2022, and at the time, Loudon was still kind of very connected to DC United in the way that they treated it as like their second team. That was like the first year before MLS, or that was the first year of MLS Next Pro as well. So like that was a whole thing. And there was only like 2 teams. I think it was Loudon and maybe Red Bull or maybe like Colorado Switchbacks were like Colorado Rapids second team that were playing in the USL that were still considered like MLS second team. So I was definitely, I was only 22 at the moment, but I was definitely one of the oldest guys on our roster. Um, and that kind of just forces you and the couple other guys that were maybe between 21 and 27 or so, like it forces you into that leadership role whether you want it or not. And I think I've always kind of just been a leader in myself, like on the field. I'm very vocal just naturally, so I think that like kind of just came to me as I kept growing and playing. But Loudon was definitely like the biggest year for me there, in terms of like leadership, just because of the age on the team, the average age and the situation. So getting named captain and then playing throughout that year as a leader on the team, like I learned a lot and I was taught a lot by the game and by other players and other teams. And we struggled that year. I would say we ended up finishing, I think 11th or 12th out of 14, which for us was honestly pretty solid considering how the year had gone. Um, but you can learn a lot from situations like that. And I think I did. I learned a lot about myself and how I react in certain situations, how I lead in certain situations, the level of the USL, which I'm very grateful for my time there. And I'm happy to see Coach Ryan Martin and the Loudon guys doing better than they've ever done this year and the past year. So yeah, that time was really transformative in that way. But I'm grateful for it.
Was Coach Martin always rocking the golf hat and the tweed elbow jackets back in the day too? Because I've only followed for the last 2 years in the USL, but it's very much a style choice.
Yes, yeah, he's been doing that since I was there for sure. I'm sure he was doing that before I got there. That's kind of his signature now. I would say he's kind of made that his thing. Yeah.
No one's ever given him grief over it. They've respected the fit.
I don't think so. I don't think so.
So from Loudon, and I think you also, to your point, when you talked about the interconnectivity to DC United, I think you were called up once or twice to DC United's first team for some possible opportunities there, but very much like you said, it was still kind of in that next pro quasi not. You then make the leap to New York City FC. You're finally home now, joining NYSCFC 2,
Mhm.
and you play in the MLS Next Pro for your next season. I've listened to some of the interviews you did. I've watched some of the performances there. What was it like knowing that you kind of went from the top of your game in the college level, in the collegiate level, you go to first flight, you then go to second flight, now you're in third flight, wanting to get back into first flight. You, what kind of versatility are we talking? What kind of mental fortitude do you need as a professional to kind of go up and down that ladder? And did you see the future ahead, or did you just say, hey, I'm going to play my next season and it is what it is? But you are home now in New York City.
Yeah, it's a great question. I think it takes a lot of mental fortitude to just jump between the levels because um, you never really know what to expect. Especially with the next pro, it was so young still at the time. I joined on NYCFC's second year, and it was the year before it was every first year for a league or a team, it's like a trial year almost. You kind of got to see where things go, what happens, how things operate, how everything's run. um, and my main goal, I think, at the time was just to get back in, kind of one, to get close to home. So that was a big priority for me, and then two, to get back in the eye of an MLS team. I think that was also the goal when I went to Loudon, but unfortunately, things just didn't work out there for me with DC United. So I wanted another way to kind of get under the eyes of some MLS coaches and staff. And it just seemed like a really good opportunity to be home. I would say, in terms of playing, like, the level is definitely different. MLS and USL are definitely more competitive and just faster pace. It's grown men versus kids. It's another situation where most of my teammates were teenagers, versus people in their 20s or 30s. And so I think I took a lot from my Loudon experience and was able to kind of implement that onto the NYCFC two, my time at NYCFC two. But yeah, it definitely takes a lot of, like, uh, it's a lot of mind games. You want to see the light at the end of the tunnel, and I think there was one for me. Like, I think my goal was go to this team, work your butt off, and try and get those looks from an MLS team. And I'm so grateful that it did work out that way, because I know there's so many guys where it doesn't work out in their favor in that way, who may deserve it as well. But um, yeah, hope that answered that question.
No, yeah, absolutely. When you're the older guy going into a predominantly younger squad, what lessons are there to pull or extract? Or, like, what do you go in hoping that you can get from that team to improve your game for yourself?
Yeah, I think for me, some of the biggest things are I would say leadership qualities, and learning about leadership is probably the biggest thing. I mean, you are dealing with kids, so you really kind of not only turn into, like, a leader on the field, but, like, you turn into, like, a big brother figure in a way. where sometimes there might be stuff going on outside of soccer, for one of your teammates, and then you can see that kind of translating on the field, and maybe you give them some advice about, like, what to do, um, in that moment in their life that might ease their mind and help them kind of focus more on the field. Or I would try and, if my teammates were struggling off the field, I would just try and tell them, like, use your time on the field as like just an escape for the moment. Like, when we train, say 2 hours every day, just use that 2 hours to like let go of everything else, and just enjoy yourself and train hard and work hard. But I would definitely say, like, for me, it was leadership that, like, you learn the most about in a situation like that, and that you focus on the most as well in a situation like that.
And you brought him up earlier, but your brother Kofi,
Mhm.
one is he's a twin, but he's not identical, right? You
Oh,
guys,
eternal, yeah.
okay, who's the older between the two?
He is. He is.
Does he lord that over you every chance he gets?
Uh, I'd say he used to more physically. He does, because he's like 4 inches taller than me, which is just so messed up. I don't know how that happened, but obviously there's nothing nothing I could do about that. But yeah.
So, if I, based on what I was looking at timelines
Mhm.
in your NYCFC2 time, did you guys get to both play together? Because it looks like he was also able to join the two side as a goalkeeper for the unit. Did you guys get to kind of have like a reconnection and play some time together, or were they two ships passing in the night?
Yeah, he at the time was brought on as like a second option, but there were 2 games, I think, that he had started that year that I started as well, which was so special. Like, I can't even tell you, like, going from just playing in our like living room or something, or playing club soccer, going up together, and then going off to college and playing separately, and then just having our own experiences and kind of having that all come to like full circle, was really, was really special. And I think there's like a lot of people, like siblings or brothers or sisters or whatever, who like dream of moments like that, and it was so surreal for that to really become reality. Because I think, yeah, I think it was crazy. We had, like, talks when we were younger, where we're like, oh, like, how cool would it be if this could happen? But that's all, like, dreams and hypotheticals at that time. So for it to really like happen, I think it was special. And I know he would say the same thing, but like neither of us would be able to be where we were and do the things that we did prior and post, like, without each other. I think just like us pushing each other growing up and competing against each other, it's like we wouldn't be where we are without the other one. So then, for like all our hard work and time and effort spent, like, and our family was there and friends were there, it's like it was really cool. Yeah.
Was it even more special the fact that it was in New York as well? There's the reunion, and then you get to rep your hometown, because I know how much that means to you.
Yeah. Yeah. It was, I mean, yeah. Yeah. It was insane to do it in New York, to just to have our people there. Like, it was really cool. And I think we won one game, we tied the other. So yeah.
Tied meaning, did he have to face the next pro shutout rules or
Yeah.
shootout rules?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
I think we ended up losing in penalties, but I don't know.
We won't put that on Kofi.
Yeah,
That's,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
So then I want to ask one last question about New York City FC.
Mhm.
There's always, obviously they're getting their new stadium. The renderings look beautiful. I can't wait to go down and see it once it's finished. But I want to ask you, having trained and been a part of New York City FC, playing between Yankee Stadium and City Field, obviously, from more, I guess, the culture side of things, because I feel like you'd be properly positioned to know this. Has the team been able to cement its kind of fan base and dynamic, having to kind of rotate between where they can get playing time in the city of New York? Like, has that hurt them at times, or is it something that once now they'll have this beautiful venue, like even more fans will start to kind of commit because they were playing at two different baseball parks, at any given time?
I think I think it's hurt them, but it will help them, because I think, like, when you play at Yankee Stadium, you're mostly getting fans from, maybe I'd say, like, the Manhattan area and then the Bronx area and then like the upstate area. And then when you play at City Field, it's more Brooklyn, Long Island, and also Manhattan and Queens. And I think, you definitely notice, like as a player, you notice like anytime you would play at either stadium, like there's not as many fans as like that you have in total. But I think with this soccer specific stadium being built, like I think all those fans will kind of come together and be like, all right, now we have this home. Like, of course, we're all going to show out and go. So I think like for the years that they've been playing in the baseball stadiums, I think it's kind of hurt them just in terms of like creating a loud, like good environment. But I think once they have this stadium, it'll really translate in a good way.
Do you see, from a growth perspective, do you see, well, actually, do you enjoy seeing them in one stadium versus the other, or did you enjoy practicing and conditioning in one versus the other? Which is the better temporary, I guess?
I think a lot of guys actually preferred playing at City Field just due to the grass that they laid down. For me, Yankee Stadium, I mean, City Field was very cool. Don't get me wrong. For me, Yankee Stadium was like very special just because I grew up a Yankees fan and watched the Yankees. So like my first time ever in that stadium was with Orlando. We had a game in New York and I was rostered for that. So that was cool. But then like kind of playing half our home games there, like half my home games there for a season was like that was so crazy to me. Like that was another one of those moments where it's like something from your childhood that's like now like obviously I wasn't stepping up to the plate to hit a home run, but like you still are in the locker rooms and in the hallways where like greats were, so that was really cool as a lifelong Yankees fan. That was like, yeah, that was awesome.
So let's get into your time with Rhode Island FC. Bit of an unconventional approach on how you joined this team, earning first a 25-day contract as the season had already started. You come in a time of need. Can you walk us through how did you get connected to the club in the first place, and what led to the tryout slash 25-day tryout and then permanence that came afterwards?
Yeah, so I think a lot of for people who don't know, I went on a 2 week trial period during preseason with the team, um, and that was just I was not picked up by NYCFC that year, so I was like in search of a new team, and my agent got in contact with Rhode Island, and they were like, yeah, we'd love to have him on trial, like bring him in. So I did the 2 week trial, and I think I like showed them what I could do, and I met all the guys and the coaching staff, and I enjoyed my time. And at the moment, it just wasn't to be. It just didn't work out. So then I went back home and I was kind of trying to figure out what was next, like if I was going to go on trial somewhere else or whatever. And then at the point, I think it was right before April, they reached out to my agent again, and they said, we want to sign Rio on a 25-day contract. And I was like, yeah, of course, because I think I already kind of had built like nothing too deep, but like relationships with the guys, and I knew the coaching staff, so it was a pretty easy like no brainer for me. And then signing the 25-day, that was a time when I really did build like relationships with the guys, and got to see the field, got to see game time and all that. And then I'm just so grateful for like after that to be able to sign for the rest of the season.
Can I ask, was there an encroaching fear whether the first time you were in trial you don't get the call, but then you're also now going into the start of most of the seasons across the leagues for the teams that are playing, and you're now like in that moment of, okay, game time's already happened, I'm not in one of these. Then you get the call again, and it's like, I've got 25 days to prove myself to Kano and to the fans. Like, did fear ever get in? Like, did it ever creep inside, or did you push that down? Like, how do you manage that?
Yeah, there was plenty of times, plenty of moments where I'm like, man, like because after the trial, like you said, like the MLS season had already started, the USL season had already started, even like the next pro, which I didn't really have I didn't really want to do at this point in my career. But all these leagues had already started, so it's like, dang, like, am I even gonna have a team this year? And then you get into like, am I still trying to play like professionally, like, or because to wait a whole year and not play, then teams aren't really gonna want to pick up a guy who hasn't played in a year, so then that definitely starts to creep in. But I just kept pushing myself in the moment to like just train and to stay ready. And I think in my head at the time, it was still like, I still do want to play soccer professionally. And, there's nothing else you can do but just hope that an opportunity will present itself in a moment like that. And then when the 25 day came around, like in my head, it's like, I have nothing else to lose. Like it's this or, you know, like this is it. So I was just like let me just try and do this, man. Like let me just try and get this contract. And there were definitely times in that 25 days too where I'm like, I can't mess up here. I can't do this, otherwise like that could be my career on the line, whatever. So those thoughts definitely like creep into your head, but you just like, I just try to stay like true to myself and work hard and show the coaching staff and my teammates that like I deserve a spot on the team. And um, yeah, I'm just grateful that I ended up getting that opportunity to sign and show the fans what I can do.
Can you walk us through what was the feeling like when you got the permanent contract? Like timeline wise, like hopefully this wasn't 11:59 with 50 seconds to go before the 25 day was up. Like, how did it feel to know you had made it?
Yeah, it was cool. We actually, so my last day on my contract was I think October 28th or 29th, and on that day we had a game against Westchester in the Jägermeister, and I started that game and I had like friends and family in the crowd at that time because it's the closest place that any USL championship or League One team will play to New York. So I had people in the crowd, and they all knew what the stakes were at the time too. Like they all knew my situation. Like the 25 days, this was the last day of it. Like we'll see what happens. Um, and then yeah, after the game, Kano pulled me aside and he was like, "We're really pleased with what you've done. Like we want to sign you for the rest of the season." And then I was so happy. I was just like, I didn't really know what to say. I was just like saying thank you and you know like, I'm gonna work hard. I'm not gonna let you down. All that stuff. And then I got onto the bus and he announced it with the guys, and it was like everybody was like cheering, and it was a special moment. But it's nice, any point in your life when you work so hard towards something, like it's nice to kind of get that like feeling of like, I did that. Like it's a goal that you achieved, in the moment. And obviously it's not like a lifelong thing or anything, but just in the moment you work so hard for it, and then you end up getting that recognition and you end up achieving that specific goal. It's like it's very cool. Yeah.
I feel like Kano has a bit of a flair for the dramatic. I think he did something similar for Kevin when he got his contract, his first ever. I feel like Kano just finds these moments like, oh yeah, Rio's going to be in New York in front of his family. I guess this is a perfect time to give him the best news of the day.
Yeah, yeah, I would say it was like very good timing with it, with the game being in New York and all that. Yeah.
So, want to talk to you about the performance overall. You've had a tremendous impact to this team so far since you've joined up. Defensively, this team is, I think, fourth or fifth best in the league right now. Only 20 goals conceded. Offensively, we're not quite there yet. I know that there's work being done to improve that. But want to ask you, are you able to separate out the individual performances and the accomplishments you've had defensively, despite the fact that the team probably isn't as high up the table as they'd like to be?
Yeah. I mean, we are very strong defensively this year. I think we have so many great defenders on our roster and capable and able defenders on our roster, which I think just pushes each of us defenders individually, like in training every day, to like work that much harder, to compete for spots. And yeah, I think obviously like ideally we score more goals and we are a little higher in the table, but I think it's important at least as defenders to like pat ourselves on the back when we can and when we do have a good performance, because at the end of the day, if you work hard to get a clean sheet, like you get a clean sheet, and that's the worst possible case scenario, and that is a tie, you know. So I think the defenders as a whole, I think this year have kind of like stayed true to ourselves, that even, you know, even sometimes if the team is struggling or whatever, like, you know, we're still going to work hard and we're still going to try and, you know, give ourselves credit when credit is due, even if it's, you know, a tie, or even if it's, you know, maybe even like a 1-1 tie or something like that. It's like, you know, you still want to give yourself credit when you can. So but yeah, it's a great group of defenders this year, and we're very confident in our defense. So I think that's really good as well.
And then speaking of that group of defenders and maybe the larger team as a whole, who have been some of the friendships that you've quickly built, or maybe there were legacy connections that existed before you joined the squad? Who have been some of the guys that you've pulled or have pulled you in pretty close in the locker room?
Man, I would say everybody. I mean, it's a really special group of guys. I think, you know, one of the things I tell everybody is like, and I think anybody who's played in the MLS versus the USL, that I think it's so clear to see, like MLS, there's so many like egos, I feel like, on teams. And I feel like, you know, once individual success is like prioritized over the team, it can kind of get a little sticky at times. And I think in the USL, there's just a little less of that. Like here and there, maybe on teams there is that, but on this team, like everybody really has everybody else's back, which is really special. And yeah, I would say everybody. I knew goalkeeper Will Meyer prior to my time here. He played on NYCFC two when last year, the year I was on the first team. So he's, you know, a great friend. But all the guys, man. I mean, you know, all the defenders, I get along very well with our group, and then, you know, all the guys. I really can't say there's anybody in particular. I think just it's such a good group of guys, and hard workers and humble individuals. And um, you know, I'm grateful for that, because I think that is like the foundation and the base of a really good team and a successful team. So, you know, we have that, which can just breathe confidence into us, and the rest, you know, you can work on the other stuff, and you can build on the other stuff. But to have that as like the foundation is really important. So, yeah.
And you talked a second ago about what the championship is versus the MLS, but kind of going back to something you said earlier, comparing your time the first time around at Loudon to now, how have you seen the league grow competitively in infrastructure, in personalities? What's been the big difference in just a few years?
Yeah, man, it's so awesome to see. I think, you know, I think soccer in the States is just growing as a whole, and I think that's affecting the MLS. I think it's affecting the USL, the USL two, or sorry, USL Championship, USL League One, MLS Next Pro, and I think just the more it grows, the better the level becomes. The more star players there are in the MLS, then, you know, that maybe the guys that used to get pretty decent looks in that league maybe aren't getting that as much. So they'll, you know, move down to the USL, and then championship. And then, you know, that makes the USL level grow. So I've definitely seen the level just, you know, of soccer, like the actual level of soccer and quality, like get better since my time at Loudon, which is really great for the league, and just for soccer in the States. And then I also think like infrastructure is definitely, you know, getting better as well. Like again, just with the growth of soccer in the States, more people are paying attention, more people are tuning in. You know, years ago, you would never see a stadium like Centerville Bank Stadium in the USL, you know, like 10, 20 years ago or whatever. But now there's, you know, that the Centerville Bank Stadium like compares to like MLS stadiums, in my opinion. You know, it's such a nice stadium, and it creates such a nice environment, and it's in like such a nice location. Like it's really like an ideal spot. So I think that is also changing for the better in a lot of these organizations, and I think it's just going to continue to grow. And yeah.
Speaking of growing, want to ask this question. You've become a fan favorite. What I love the most about the USL is there's a accessibility that I don't think exists at the next tier up, where your game's over, you see family, friends, and then you kind of hit the locker room. Here, you guys always make yourself accessible to fans. I want to ask, if I could end things on a note of what's the single most important lesson that you'd want to pass on to these young fans that are learning more about you, whether it's here in Rhode Island or they've been following your career since its beginnings in New York. what's kind of that lesson, that moment, that memory that you would want to pass on to the next generation as they think about becoming soccer players in their futures?
Yeah, I would just tell, and I do try and tell whenever I talk to like younger soccer players and younger athletes, I just try and tell them like hard work. You really got to work hard to get to where you want to go. Like doing anything in the world, but especially with sports, especially with soccer. Um, Work hard, stay humble. Again, like I said, like I think you always have to worry about yourself and you always have to put personal success at a certain level. But um, I'm a firm believer that like the team comes first because when the team does well, you do well. And I don't think it works the other way. Like I think if you do well, sometimes the team can still not do that well. But yeah, just work hard, stay humble. I think it's so I mentioned the fans earlier in the podcast, but it's so special for an athlete like for myself just to like finish these games and when all the kids run down to the autograph alley and they're screaming your name, oh you're my favorite player, oh nice game tonight, like it's such a special feeling for real. And I think when you're a kid and you go to sporting events, it's like you remember those moments, you remember seeing Derek Jeter make a play at freaking shortstop. You remember like watching David Villa score, whatever it is. And then, those moments where maybe you make the big screen at a stadium or maybe you get an autograph from your favorite player. Like those are such special moments as kids. And then for me now to be in the position, like the opposite position of like, I can make, a little kid's day by like signing his ball. It's like, it's very special. So those moments are also really special to me. And um, I think they're very special to all the athletes. So I think that's why we do make time for our fans after every game and whenever we can, because we know the importance of that, and we know how special those moments can be for young fans and older fans and whoever it may be. But the fans are so special, man, because the fans are what create the environment and what can give a team that maybe extra push that they need in a game or in a season to like be successful. So I think it's really important to know that and understand that, and then to give back to those fans because they're paying their money to come see the games, taking time out of their day to come support us. They don't have to do that. Like we're just a soccer team, but they choose to do that, which is like it's really special. And it I appreciate that, and I always say like the fans are the reason, one of the reasons I play, because again, like it's hard to play in an empty stadium, like when you don't have that. But when you have a great fan base, like it really becomes an advantage. So um, a lot of the guys and the coaching staff tell the story of last year when they went to Louisville in the playoffs, and it was like a huge group of fans that were there and supporting them, and they had that huge win, and then the fans are there chanting. It's like those moments are like so incredibly important, whether the fans know it or not. Like they're really special and important for teams. So yeah, I'm grateful for the fans here, man. They're awesome. They're awesome.
Well, I know that they love you in return, and I hope that they and yourself can have many more wonderful memories this season and beyond. I want to thank you so much for coming on the podcast. Can't wait to talk more footy with you at some later date. But I do have one last final question that needs to be put on the record here.
Yeah.
As a New Yorker, what's your take on Connecticut as a state? Is it considered a suburb of New York, or do you actually see it as a part of New England?
I see Connecticut as a part of New England. I have some family there, so like, um, yeah, I wouldn't say it's upstate. I wouldn't really consider it part of New York, but yeah, I'd put it in the New England category.
So New York doesn't want it, New England doesn't want it. It's just somewhere in between. Perfect.
Yeah, not disrespectfully, man. Just Connecticut is Connecticut, man.
Respectfully, of course.
Yeah, yeah,
Well, Rio, thank you so much, like I said, for coming on. We're definitely going to have to get you some RI pizza really soon. You have to get some of these pizza strips, and
yeah.
then we'll have to get that follow-up content on whether or not they pass the pizza vibes. But in the meantime, thank you so much for coming on. Can't wait to have you back on soon, and good luck with the rest of the season.
Thank you so much for having me. It was a pleasure.
Likewise. Make sure to check out all of our friends at the Blazing Musket for all of your New England soccer coverage, including Rhode Island FC news at theblazingmusket.com. And don't forget to follow along on our journey. You can follow us on Twitter, Threads, TikTok, all the others at RFC Podcast. Our Instagram is at Raising Anchor. And of course, our website, raisinganchorpodcast.com. Until then, have a great day.